On a certain spring day, in a remote corner of the world, a handful of men, like strange voyagers from another planet, set foot to a small Pacific island. Who are these weirdly garbed visitors who so gingerly pick their way forward? And what do they expect to find on this barren strip of coral sand? Can there be any plan, any purpose in this jumbled mass of pieces and bits? And yet, why the expectancy, like probers into antiquity entering the sealed tomb of a pharaoh? Why the diligent, absorbing searching into ruins? Or are these ruins? A scant 2 months before, these men arrived from the United States. Then they were even as you and I. And only 3 months before that, this island was just a spot on a map, known only to the captains of battered tramp steamers. But this island, a part of an atoll known in the Micronesian tongue as Eniwetok, had a date with destiny. 7,500 miles away, the planners met and began to mesh the gears which are to change the face of the island. And so it is that tropical Eniwetok comes to know the mechanical prowess of men who have changed many a similar island during the late Pacific War. For this was virgin land, and as always, since man first entered a wilderness, tangled and matted vegetation must be removed for working space, for elbow room. The surface is then rearranged into new patterns as machines first dig up, then level the coral soil. But simple flattening alone is not enough. Cement and tar are added to form a hard, level surface. Islands of our atoll now begin to assume the character of gigantic tabletops, bowing to the engineer's exacting transit. But there is more to come. Underwater obstacles are blasted. A causeway is built to link two islands. And mushrooming across the face of the atoll, a tent city for living quarters, Quonset huts for supplies. So the islands take the shape, the form of their planners. A native of this sun-baked area of the world would be amazed and bewildered at these strange doings. To an American, most of these things would seem routine, but there are some things not even he could explain. For what purpose these low cubes constructed of reinforced concrete oddly mixed with nuts and bolts? Why this tower in the middle of the lagoon? For what reason this underground cable? But most of all, why this steel giant dominant on the landscape? It is clear that this is not an ordinary island. This is not just another supply base, not just another landing strip. This tower rising in the sky, to be the holder of fissionable material, this Azero tower, gives us the essential clue. This is an atomic island, a test island, a gigantic laboratory island. This, then, is the reason for the hard-packed sand, ready for test instruments, free of dust, clear of obstacles, like a porcelain tabletop in a physics laboratory. In a way, it seems strange indeed that a controlled scientific experiment should take place in a remote corner of the world. Why not the laboratories of the Atomic Energy Commission, or the laboratories of our colleges and universities, or even the New Mexico desert? Furthermore, why can't we cut down the amount of fissionable material and have a small atomic explosion? The scientific answer is simple. There is no such thing as a small atomic explosion. A definite known quantity, a specific critical mass is essential before a chain reaction will occur. All the laboratories and production plants of the Atomic Energy Commission contribute to the development of atomic energy and the manufacture of fissionable materials. The Los Alamos Scientific Laboratory develops the methods of using such materials and weapons. These must be proof tested. One point is positive. An adequate laboratory, a laboratory with space, is essential for our continued progress in peacetime as well as military applications of atomic energy.
Thus it was decided. At last the way was open. Hurriedly but carefully, the scientific investigators, the technicians, gather together their instruments, their gauges, their meters, their recorders, and send them to the docks, to the ships. Only one step in the tremendous, time-consuming job of planning and preparation.
All this, you ask? All this so a handful of weirdly garbed men can search in the rubble of a small Pacific isle? All this just for a test, an experiment, for unraveling one more mystery of the complex atom? Yes, all of this and more. All of this to satisfy the incredible intricacy of nuclear science, a science which demands everything, from an electronic telemetering gauge to an empty beer can. A science which also demands the highest caliber scientist and technician. So these men with their imaginative equipment moved to Eniwetok, lock, stock, and barrel. Some by ship, others by aircraft. But whether by sea or by air, they move into full partnership with the military establishment.
Operation Sandstone from first to last is a joint effort, a meeting, a blending of the total energies of the United States. The difficult problems involved in carrying out a delicate, controlled experiment in an isolated, primitive area calls for united effort, for a strong scientific team supported by all branches of the military establishment. And since this test is outside the continental limits of the United States, exceptionally strict security measures are in order. Security is a major part of test operations and is a necessary part of most atomic energy development. And yet, despite security limitations, the peacetime applications of agriculture and medicine are open to the world. Scientific knowledge in itself is not a bad thing. It is tragic that in the case of atomic power, destruction goes hand in hand with construction. The age-old story of good and evil, keeping step with man in his fight for a better life. No, the answer to man's greatest problem is not in atomic energy in itself. The answer lies in the hearts and minds of men.
The minds of men are creating this laboratory in the middle of an ocean, this tabletop barely 10 feet above the level of the sea. And on this, a machined spit of sand, the test instruments are installed, all facing the zero towers. Instruments which will give dimension, depth, and character to what exists in the minds of the scientists. Instruments designed to capture, record, measure, in a hurried millionth of a second, an event which occurs with the fleeting magic of a shooting star. Some massive, rugged, others small, delicate. Some commonplace, everyday, others marvels of engineering skill, capable of capturing happenings beyond our senses, the recording of light and neutron generation, the intensity and amount of gamma radiation. A heart gauge, the age-old symbol of peace and tranquility, becomes a measuring instrument of blast and pressure. A piston gauge, ready to absorb a cracking, jarring punch, more powerful than the collective kick of all the mules in Missouri. Instruments to give us clues which, among other things, will enable us to live longer, more useful and productive lives. It's staggering to realize how little we really know about atomic energy. The effect, for instance, on simple essentials like wood, paints, metal. We stand fascinated, like a child observing the wondrous effect of a nail flattened under the ponderous wheel of a locomotive. Photographic apparatus, as much a part of instrumentation as some of the more specialized devices, is ready. A lasting image, a permanent record to be carried away from this workshop, back for detailed analytical study in the States. Stationary banks of cameras in the photo towers, normal speed, high speed, color, black and white, cameras protected from strange tropical fungus, a growth capable of eating through the very glass of the lens. Mobile cameras mounted in photo aircraft, cameras capable of shooting 10,000 individual pictures every second, cameras with lenses powerful enough to record the dust on a flea's whisker at 5 miles. Operation Sandstone is to have the most complete photographic coverage in human